Hey guys, welcome to another video from King & Country. The reason for this particular video is to celebrate the fact that in a short time from now we'll be releasing our 20th Tiger tank, meaning this is the 20th individual Tiger tank we've produced over all these years. So while we're doing that, we thought this was also a time to look back on the history of the Tiger tank with King & Country and take you right back to the earliest days over 20 years ago when we produced our very first Tiger tank. In an earlier video I told you a little bit about how we began to produce tank models and why we began to produce tank models, and I briefly mentioned that one of the places that we did produce tank models was in the Philippines. So let's begin with one of those models that had a very big influence on what we continue to do today and how it all started. And that's this particular model here, which is one of the very first Philippine-made, hand-carved, hand-painted wooden Tiger tank models. Now this was produced around 1994, 95. And we produced them in very small numbers. We often only produced 5 or 10 model tanks at the one time. And for that time, they were actually rather expensive. They would sell for anywhere between $350 to $400 a piece. So you weren't going to sell hundreds of them, but to those collectors that wanted something special, these were great models to buy. And if they had the money to afford them, they were all theirs. So, as I say, we produced models like this in the Philippines for several years. However, what happened next began a revolution for King & Country. And that was when, sometime in 1998, we went to a toy and gift fair here in Hong Kong. And as usual, we walked around looking at all the different stands and all the different manufacturers. And I discovered that there was a company that was producing little polystone toy cars. Now that in itself was not that unusual, but these were all sort of vintage models, 1940s, 1950s, really nice. But as I looked around this particular stand, right in the very corner, almost hidden, was a little model of a vehicle that looked somewhere like a cross between a Jeep and a truck. Military vehicles, obviously. So I looked at this and I thought, hey, just a minute, if these guys can produce this kind of hybrid military vehicle, maybe they could do a model tank. Excuse me. So what I did was spoke to the company, and it turned out they were based in Shanghai, and I invited them over to our head office. I showed them some of the wooden models we were making and expressed the belief that they could do something like this in polystone. Well, they were a little bit skeptical, but they agreed that they would at least give it a try. So the very first model we gave them was actually a Sherman tank, and that came back several months later, and it was pretty good. And we sold almost immediately. We only ordered 200 vehicles, but here was a big difference. Instead of one of the wooden tanks which cost $350 or $400, we could sell this polystone tank for, I think it was $59 or $69. So it was much, much cheaper. Quite simple and quite basic by today's standards, but it started a whole revolution. So in 1999, after the first success of the Sherman tank, of course we decided the next model should be a Tiger tank. And the next two Tiger tanks you see here are a Winter Panther and a Winter Tiger, I should say, and a Summer Tiger. And those were the very first polystone Tigers we produced. Very popular, sold at a very reasonable price, which encouraged us to, we learned what was possible, what was not possible, and then we did another Tiger tank. Now this one is going to date back to, let me see, I'm just looking at my notes here, 2001. So this particular one was produced in 2001, and this was the first one where we designed two little tank crew figures that would come complete with the tank. Again, did really well. We upped the order. I think we did 300 at this point, and those all sold out. So we kept getting ambitious. Now, although we enjoyed working with the Shanghai company, we realized their limitations. At the same time, we've been working with several other companies in China, and one of the other companies in China that we were working with, they also produced our toy soldiers. So we said to them, look, if you can do these toy soldiers, we think you could make some tanks as well. So we decided to try to do a Tiger tank with these guys. And this one here that you see in front of you, this was the first of the more modern Tiger tanks that we did, and this one came with 3 figures. Now, this was our Michael Whitman Tiger. Now, this was first released in 2002, what we call our first celebrity Tiger. What made this one so special was it ran for 3 years. We just kept producing, and selling. At that time, there was virtually no other companies in the toy soldier business producing tanks. This is probably our single best-selling tank over the years. In 3 years, we sold 2,000 pieces of the Michael Whitman 007 Tiger tank. Now, next to that Michael Whitman tank, you'll see this model here, number 9. Now, as far as we can see, actually, we've done so many that even we sometimes forget a little. We think this was actually a prototype that never actually went into production. It's, as you can see, it's a version of a Tiger tank for the Africa Corps. So we thought we'd show you, and if I remember correctly, our plan was originally for it to come with 5 figures, and that's the ones that you see with it here. Now, the one, again, that broke the mold, so to speak, was the very one right at the end here, this Winter Tiger, with the code number, hull number I should say, 416. This was our very first strictly limited Tiger. It came in a special box. It came with a complete tank crew of 5 figures, and even now as I look at them, I have to say these are some of the best tank crew figures we ever did. As you can see, we've got the commander of the vehicle down the front here with 2 of his crew members who look as if they're preparing breakfast for the rest of the crew. On top of the tank itself, on top of the hull, you've got one of the crew members who's scanning the sky just to make sure there's no enemy aircraft around. And you've got the driver in the hull position itself. We made and produced 999, and it was a complete sellout. So again, this was our very first strictly limited release ever in the history of King and Country at that time. And I'm proud to say it was a great success and encouraged us to do more of them. So in the next video, we'll go on to the next batch of Tigers. See you then.